Guernsey Electricity powers our lives, but what really goes on behind the scenes at the power station? Operations engineer Joel Bramer took me on a behind the scenes tour to find out.
So what is it that Dave is controlling in here at the moment?
So Dave's actually controlling the entire electricity supply for the island. So he's both monitoring and controlling various aspects of it. So primarily he's ensuring that the generating assets that we're using, so at the minute we're using almost entirely the subsea cable, that's able to supply the demand that the island requires. So we have no control over what the electricity demand is on the island. It's entirely what the customer wants. So if the customer wants more electricity, we just have to supply that. So we import around 90% of our electricity from France via a subsea cable. And that's from the certified renewable generation. And then everything above what we can import, we have to generate on island, and that's using our marine diesel engines. So they're running on hydrocarbon fuel. So as we are at the minute, so the warmer months getting towards summer. We don't need to generate anything on island now, so we can, the import capacity is about 60 megawatts, and we're at 38.4 now, so
that's what these numbers are up here, and as you said, it's all through the cable at the moment?
Yes.
So this, it's dropping. So 38.12 megawatts, then that's coming through the cable at the moment, and that's what customers are currently using?
Yes, that's right, yes.
So you can predict, I'm guessing, as you said, warmer months, you know that demand's going to be less than in the winter months. So there's a way of predicting what the demand is going to be.
Yeah, so it's not an exact science. We have a relatively good idea. We do have a couple of pieces of software that will use both historic data and weather data, things like that, to estimate what we think will happen. And then we just have to be prepared to do that and potentially a little bit more. Always have something in the background that we know is available to take up if our prediction is wrong for any reason.
Okay. But I mean, we've been having quite a nice warm spring, haven't we? So if we looked at the data, if we really looked into it, we might have slightly less demand than we would have experienced in a colder spring in years gone by.
Yes.
But at the moment it's quite low and it's quite a steady demand?
Yes, reasonably steady. So in terms of the demand profile, so we talk about sort of 3 peaks during the day.
Okay.
So we have a morning peak that's around 8 a.m. in the morning. So that's why we're now on the way down. So we've seen that
everyone's
first
at work or school or out and about and stuff.
We then have a lunchtime peak, probably because everyone's having their lunch, cup of tea, that kind of thing. And then we have the biggest peaks, generally the evening peak, which is around sort of 7 o'clock in the evening. So that peak in the summer, the kind of the difference between the peaks, or the level of those 3 peaks is relatively flat, so there's not a huge difference. But during the winter months, the evening peak can become much bigger than the morning peak.
And that's also when people are not just cooking their dinner, but watching TV and putting the washing machines on and dishwashers and all that kind of thing, which we will talk about later. But what I'm quite interested in, from a geeky point of view potentially, is then what are all these flashing lights and buttons and things? So as you said, Dave's literally controlling or monitoring the power output for the whole island and the usage.
Yes.
So if he wanted, he could switch things on and off.
Exactly, yes.
I won't touch anything, I promise.
He absolutely could, yes. So in front of us here, we've got what's called the Generation Control Desk, or Generator Control Desk, GCD. And kind of the top portion of that is all of our generators that supply electricity onto the network. So the only one that we're using at the minute is still a generator of sorts, is the cable link, which is about sort of in the middle of the desk there. The other ones are all of our on-island generation that is based here at the power station. So they all feed onto this kind of like red line. So the red line, that's our 33,000 volt distribution network. So all of that's at the power station, and everything that comes off that is then the outgoing, we call them feeders, so that's out onto the network and then ultimately to the customers. So the electricity is generated, it goes onto a distribution bus bar, and then off that distribution bus bar, out through a switch to the customer.
So you can literally see, for you guys, like Beausejour, the Albert Pier, First Tower and everything. So you can see exactly where everything's going.
Yes.
So if there's a problem, if there was, say, a problem at Beausejour, you could isolate it, or you could work out where it is.
Yes.
Through here.
Yes. So the all of the switchgear has both protection and alarm function on it. So if a good example would be if someone was to have a cable strike. So if someone's digging in the road,
yes, okay,
accidentally hits a cable.
Which does happen accidentally from time to time, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. The switchgear will recognise that there's been a fault on that. It will open, so then it takes the power off that cable, makes it safe for the person in the digger. And then we will get alarms that come back to Dave here on our alarm monitoring system, which is called SCADA. And that then alerts Dave that there has been a problem on that.
So it's really quick then. That's how you guys can tell immediately then where these faults are.
Yes, so for the what we call the high voltage network, so that's the 33,000 and then the 11,000 volt network, all of that has got monitoring on it. So if anything happens on any of those assets, we're informed about that here back in the control room. Where we have less monitoring is on the lower voltage stuff. So when it actually ends up coming into your house, so all of the bits that drop down from the 11,000 volts to 415 volts. The 415 volts is the low voltage networks, we call it. We don't have much monitoring on that, so at that point we then become reliant on the customers phoning us and saying like, oh, I'm off supply, I've got no electricity.
And I'm just noticing in the corner of my eye, the numbers are 37, fluctuating up and down now. Is there a better time of day for any of those faults to occur? So if it happened in the middle of the morning, 9:30, 10 o'clock, is it better from a Guernsey Electricity point of view than if it happened at 7 p.m. at night when everyone's cooking tea and doing whatever else they're doing?
I would say there's almost no good time for it, to be perfectly honest, because all of these faults need some kind of corrective action. So that's always a human intervention. So from the control room's perspective, they cannot leave. So Dave has to stay in that seat all day, all for his entire shift. So he might be aware of a problem, but he's unable to actually do anything about it. So he then has to get someone else to come in. So I'll be one of our network team to go out, identify the problem, fix it, put everything back and everyone's power back on.
So 24 hours a day, it really doesn't make any difference to you guys. There's always someone here monitoring. And there's a fault whenever it is, it has to be addressed at that time?
Yes. So we aim to get everyone, sort of, when we call it back on supply, so everyone's power back available as quick as we possibly can. So the other perspective to that is ideally you don't want something to happen at a high usage period, so because then it affects more people. So overnight, if it was 3 a.m, if you lost quite a number of customers, less people would be aware of that. So it's still the same problem, but it becomes less impactful. So you get less people phoning in saying, I'm off supply, I've got a problem. Whereas if it happens at 6 o'clock at night and everyone's at home, everyone is aware of it, or there's more people aware of it. So then it tends to become slightly more stressful, let's say.
But it doesn't make it any easier to fix if it's 3 a.m. than if it's 3 p.m.
No, the fix will be, generally it's exactly the same. It's the distribution network is mostly set up in a way that there is 2 supplies to every point. So we will typically run off one supply. So if there is a fault, we can then change it over to the other supply. So it does take a bit of human intervention. Someone has to go out and we call it switching. So they have to switch the network to get that to work. But once they've done that, then if it is 3 a.m, they can go home then. They've done their job. And then we wait for the daylight hours before we go out and find what the actual problem is, which if it's a fault with the cable, then a dig team will come out, expose the faulty bit of cable. They'll put a repair on that, cover everything back up, and
I'm going to go back to these numbers now. So you've got me thinking about the peaks, as you were mentioning. So there's 3 peaks during a 24-hour period. I'm presuming it never drops to zero, because obviously there's always something running off electricity, and we've obviously got the hospital and other organisations that are operating 24 hours a day. But what could it potentially drop to in those early hours of the morning in terms of the demand?
Yeah, during the summer, which is when we have our lowest demands, we've seen it sort of as low as 20 megawatts.
Oh wow, okay.
So the import cable, it can't go negative, but it could go down to zero. It would be happy to get down to very, very little.
But that would mean literally everyone switching everything off, presumably.
Yeah, so it is possible, but
it's not going to happen anytime soon.
There's a lot of things that, they just never switch off really. So even things like your TV at home, it's on standby. It's still consuming a very small amount of power. And then there'll be plenty of essential services. The hospital will never want to switch off. Places like the airport or the harbours, they've got systems that they don't want switched off.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just 'cause it keeps catching my eyes. It's going up and down. So it's kind of dropped to 37.1, I think. So it would be interesting to come back at kind of 3 a.m. and see how low it goes. But then, so if it drops as low as say 20 and then up to 90, was it 96 you said last December?
94.
94. That is a huge swing, isn't it? So
yes. Yeah.
What would be the happy medium? If people could reduce their peak usage, is there a magic number that we're aiming for?
The magic number would be probably 60 megawatts.
Okay, all right, so we've got a bit of work to do.
Yeah, the import cable currently as it is today can import about 60 megawatts. It does vary ever so slightly depending on, interestingly enough, because it comes through Jersey, what's happening in Jersey also affects what happens or how much power we can import through the cable. But as a rule of thumb, we say 60 megawatts import is the ideal number. And if we could, in a perfect world, we would have 60 megawatts all day, all night, 24/7, 365 days a year, because then from our perspective, that subsea cable is being used to its optimum potential. So we cannot get any more out of it, but we're getting our full return on investment from that.
Okay, so we've just seen, was it D engine?
3D.
3D?
Yeah.
Switched on. So why is it being switched on though? It's a lovely summer day. It's a lovely sunny day anyway. Why is it being switched on today?
So as part of our sort of, I think it's actually mandated by the states as a requirement as an electricity generator. We have to maintain enough on-island generation to provide all the power demands throughout the year.
Okay.
So we periodically test our generators to make sure that they're still operational, running, there's no faults or anything like that. So it's a little bit like your car. You can imagine, your lawnmower is a good example. If you leave your lawnmower in the shed all winter, you come out in spring, try and start it, and it just won't go.
Yeah, okay.
So to avoid any of that troubles, if we were to need an engine urgently for any reason, we periodically test start them just to make sure that they're all still running and everything's working correctly.
So if anyone wondered why there was smoke today, as I said, a nice sunny day, but there's some smoke coming out. It's going to clear very quickly, but it's just for a routine test today. But what is the smoke?
So it's exactly the same sort of emissions that come out your car exhaust. So a lot of it's CO2. There is a small amount of kind of like soot or that kind of thing. That's what you can actually see as the soot. But as that heats up and the exhaust gas, so initially on startup, there's very little load on the engine, and it's not very good for the engines to run like that. So it's like idling your car at traffic lights. It's not brilliant for combustion. So once the engine gets kind of loaded up, all that smoke will slowly clear, and then you'll barely notice anything coming out. You'll see a bit of a heat haze coming out, but at that point, then the vast majority of it is just CO2 and emissions like you have many combustion.
But generally speaking, at the moment, all of our on-island electricity, it's coming through the cable. There's not actually any on-island generation. So this was a test today. So everything is working well if we do need it, which is obviously a very good sign for us.
Yes, exactly, yes. From about February, March time usually. So typically it's the clock changes. It's quite a good measure. So when we get the two clock changes actually during the year. So between those two clock changes, typically.
So like March, October time, is it?
So we can normally supply everything we need through the subsea cable. So there are some exceptions to that, generally weather exceptions. But usually once we get into the kind of the summer months, that's it. We're completely subsea cable import only, so there's no need to actually run generators for island electricity demand.
And using the cable is better for the island's decarbonisation plans, isn't it?
Exactly, yes. So every electricity unit that we import through the cable has come from a certified renewable source. So that could be hydro, wind, or solar electricity that's produced on the European grid.
Okay, and if we all reduce our peak usage and flatten those curves that we were talking about and the 3 peaks a day, that's also then better overall for the decarbonisation of the island.
Yeah, exactly. So particularly in the kind of we call them the shoulder months, so that's the spring and the autumn time. There's periods of the day, particularly around the evening peak, where we're only just above what the subsea cable can import, and it might only be for an hour or an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So if as an island collectively, we could just avoid that peak for, there's easy things to avoid, so particularly water heating, so your hot water cylinder.
Yeah.
Even your heating at home, if you could, either heat up before or after that.
Yeah.
They're all, good ways to reduce that peak, and then we might be able to not have to start an engine.
Okay. Well, let's discuss some of those ways in more detail.